Nothing in the Lou Brydges Show is intended to be legal analysis, legal advice, or legal recommendations that would be applicable to your particular situation. Everyone in foreclosure or underwater with their mortgage are encouraged to seek legal counsel for a review of your specific situation. Welcome to the weekly broadcast of the Lou Brydges Show, telling the truth about the foreclosure crisis and the greatest financial crime in history that created it. Are you in foreclosure, at risk of foreclosure, or underwater with your mortgage? Do you know someone who is? Every week on this show, you'll get real answers from a real attorney. Lou Brydges will explain options in the foreclosure process. He'll talk about defective mortgages, mortgage restructuring, loan modification, short sale negotiation, and discuss what to look for when choosing a foreclosure defense attorney. Lou is an experienced foreclosure defense lawyer on the front lines of mortgage defense and litigation. Lou is dedicated to helping you keep your property. And now, it's time for the Lou Brydges Show and the truth about foreclosure. Here's your host, Lou Brydges.
Good morning, Chicago. Another beautiful Saturday morning. Lou Brydges here on the Lou Brydges Show. I've got my wingman, Mike Main, my producer, Debbie Schreiner, and I want to thank all the listeners who have been writing in and sending in. We have a Facebook page now. You can contact us there, or you can obviously contact us at the number that Mike will give you. And thank all the listeners. The show is really taking off beyond our wildest expectations, and you know, I just had an inkling. I had a voice, if you will, that told me that this needed to be done because the purpose of this show is, of course, to spread the truth about the greatest financial crime spree in history perpetrated by the Wall Street investment banks and the continuing today by the major banks that service mortgages. That and more is coming out. You know, we start every segment, every show with the quote from Thomas Jefferson, which Thomas Jefferson wrote, warned us over 250 years ago. He warned the American people, "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. If the American people ever allow the private banks to control the issue of currency, the banks and the corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all their property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered." Well, certainly Thomas Jefferson's warning, prophecy, is coming true today. And it will come true if we let it. But it's up to we, the people, to stop this because this is about the land, and it's the same battle. It's the Battle of Evermore, it's been called. It's the same battle we fought 500 years ago in England, and the same battle we'll fight 500 years from now, probably. It's over the land. And if you're in foreclosure, if you're facing foreclosure, if you're underwater for your mortgage, there is many things you can do about this. You can fight the foreclosure. You can demand a restructuring of your mortgage because the reason you're underwater isn't anything you did wrong, and it wasn't any cyclical downturn of the real estate market. It was because there was an artificial bubble that was created by the Wall Street investment banks that were bundling and packaging mortgage-backed securities and selling them to investors, primarily public employee retirement funds. Now, these public employee retirement funds, thankfully, have been protected by the government guarantees and the credit default swaps and the private mortgage insurance that was purchased that you paid for. But these investment banks, they made a ton of money doing this. And they made a lot more money doing it by inflating the value of American real estate, forcing up the value of American real estate, the cost, not the value, the cost of American real estate by 131% from 1998 to 2008. The average American house that cost $100,000 in 1998 cost $231,000 in 2008. And that wasn't because of any increase in the cost of construction or the cost of lumber or wood or anything. It was an artificial balloon created by those who are controlling the currency. And they also are taking over branches of government, the Fed, the Office of Comptroller of the Currency. But there is a growing movement in this country fighting this. The Thomas Jefferson quote is being quoted far and wide across this country today. I see where Max Gardner has added it to his website. And Neil Garfield has been advocating this for a long time. Professor Adam Levitin, Georgetown University. There's Eric Schneiderman, the U.S. Attorney in New York, and a number of other prominent officials are starting to fight back on this. The new head of the Fannie that was appointed to head Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the FHA, has been a long-time advocate of restructuring of mortgages. We're going to go into that, and so if you know anybody that is in foreclosure, facing foreclosure, or underwater, and there are still estimates that there are 20 million American families that are underwater. That is, underwater means that if you owe more, if the mortgage is greater than the fair market value of the property, you are paying more to live in the property than you should be. And again, this isn't because, some bad investment or some, unfortunate circumstance of, the rise and fall of prices that befell you. No, you were unlawfully and deceptively induced into signing a note and mortgage for more than the property was worth. These appraisals were not conducted in accordance with the federal regulations regarding appraisals. And the reason they weren't is because the originators would be given such incentives and such pressure to produce mortgages that they did anything they could. And you didn't pick the appraiser, they did. And this whole thing wasn't the originators and the appraisers, they're just doing what normal people would do. When you have somebody from Wall Street who's saying, I need 2,500 mortgages this week and I'll give you $20,000, $40,000, $60,000 commission for producing a $200,000-$300,000 mortgage. Well, you probably all knew originators that were making just, vast sums of money. Why were they being so induced? Because the Wall Street investment banks that are bundling and packaging these mortgage-backed securities, MBS, mortgage-backed securities, are just giving them their incentive. They're giving them the incentive to produce the mortgages without regard to the true value of the property, and also to make promises to homeowners. Homeowners would say, geez, I can't afford that house. And the originator would say, yes, the real estate agent would say, yes, you can. We can get you a 0% mortgage. And the homeowner says, well, what happens in 2 years when the interest rate kicks in? I'm not going to be able to afford that. Don't worry. We'll get you another 0% interest, another 0% mortgage, because the value of the house will have gone up 20% in 2 years. You'll walk out of that closing when we refinance with money in your pocket, and you'll have another 0% mortgage. There was a guy in Chicago radio that advertised it was like the easiest dirt or something like that. Well, yeah. And why were they doing this? They weren't, perpetrating some mass crime. They're just, there's an opportunity to make money by producing mortgages. And who's paying them the money to produce these mortgages? The Wall Street investment banks and the major banks that service them. Because now here is a dirty little secret that I'm going to let out. The major banks, they don't loan their own money. It is not their money that's been loaned. It's investors' money, public employee pension funds and the like. Major banks are the servicers of the mortgage. The 12 major banks that services mortgages in this country own virtually none of the mortgages. Zero. They're owned by either Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or a private trust in the case of a securitized mortgage. They are the servicer, and the servicer makes a lot more money servicing a mortgage in foreclosure than they do servicing a mortgage that's performing. Typically, Wells Fargo services 7 million mortgages, all right? If 7 million mortgages are paying, they charge about $10 per month to open up the envelope, cash the check, process the check, and forward it to whoever owns the mortgage. $70 million a month. But if 1 million of those mortgages are in foreclosure, they charge about $300 a month for servicing a mortgage in foreclosure. So that's, of those 1 million alone, that's $300 million. You still got 60 million on the other 6 million. So you go from 70 million to 360 million. A difference of about $300 million multiplied by 12 months comes to $3.6 billion per year. And that's only if 1% or 1 million, 14% of the 7 million are in foreclosure. And they have a lot more than that in foreclosure. That is why the HAMP program was sabotaged by the major banks. That is why all the restructuring, all the modification programs have been so abject failures. But things are changing. The word is getting out because the truth cannot be suppressed. And the truth is that they don't own the mortgage. The truth is that there was a lot of deception in the origination of the mortgage, a lot of fraud, a lot of unlawful activity. The truth is you can defend a foreclosure lawsuit. And the truth is that there is relief in the form of a restructuring. That is a reduction of principal balance to reflect the true fair market value of the property. Even if there's been a judgment entered, we can vacate judgments. We can file, even if you've already been foreclosed, we can file suits to reopen the lawsuit because the judgment was obtained by fraud. And that's what's happening around the country. And that is where the people come in. You see, Thomas Jefferson Property says, if the American people ever allow private banks, it's up to you, American people, to fight back, to fight for the land. It's the same battle that you've always fought. It's the same battle our American people have always fought. It's always been about the land. It always will be about the land because that is what is real. That's why they call it real estate. So we're going to talk about some of the options, some of the things you can do in this show. We're going to break now for a little sports and weather and everything. And for me to catch my breath, you get me rolling on this, and obviously it gets my dander up. This is the Lou Brydges Show. This is the show in which we're trying to spread the truth about the greatest financial crime spree in history, the mortgage foreclosure crisis, and what you can do about it. Please visit our website. Please visit our Facebook page. Mike's going to give you our web page's Facebook page.
Facebook.com, The Lou Brydges Show. That's Bridges with a Y. You can also find us at FightIllinoisForeclosures.com.
Remember, people, but whatever you do never give up the land and never surrender. And know everything will be all right. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the Lou Brydges Show with Louis Brydges, one of Chicago's leading foreclosure defense attorneys. Here's Lou to tell you what to look for when hiring a foreclosure defense attorney and how to avoid being conned on AM 560. The Answer.
Welcome back, Chicago. Lou Brydges here with Mike Main, my wingman, Debbie Schreiber, my producer. I'm going to just do a quick little news segment here that we try to cover every week. The past week or so, the reported news, foreclosure auctions rise in Cook County, foreclosure lawsuits still being filed, 2,500 last month. Bloomberg News reports that the senators are approaching a plan to abolish Fannie Mae and to shrink the U.S. backstop, the guarantee of U.S. mortgages, which is what the Wall Street investment banks took advantage of in the first place to actually bring down an entire world economy. And, on other shows we've talked about how we were this close to global famine of a biblical scale when back in 2008 when the economy was when all the credit default swaps were being credit default swaps were being claimed against American Insurance Group, the largest insurer in the world. Here in New York Times reports errors affect more checks issued to aid homeowners. Now this is something a lot of our clients are getting checks from as a result of the so-called independent foreclosure review. This was, if you recall, 2 years ago, when the state attorney generals were investigating all the banks about the abuses in the foreclosure process, the frauds upon the court, the frobo signing, the fabricated documents, and all that kind of stuff that was going on. That's why this is a continuing crime spree by the major banks. The banks said, well, state attorney generals, you can't investigate us. We're national associations. We're exempt. Only the federal government can investigate us. And the state attorney general said, oh, yes, we can. You're doing business in our state. You're perpetrating frauds on our court, and we can and we will investigate you. Our own Attorney General Lisa Madigan was one of the leaders in this effort, and I applaud her for that. So the banks ran off to OCC, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, out of just nowhere, and I mean out of nowhere, there's an announcement 2 years ago. The Office of Control of the Currency has announced a consent decree with the banks. What? Who knew you were even conducting an investigation? Well, they weren't. The banks went to them because, you see, the banks control OCC. The major banks control. It's a revolving door. The personnel that works at the Office of Control of the Currency leave there, they go work for the banks. Then they leave the banks, they go to work for OCC. Back and forth. That's how they control the OCC. Some say they also control the Fed in the same way, but that's not my issue. So anyway, OCC announces the consent decree. The banks are going to conduct an independent foreclosure review of the 1.5 million foreclosures they accomplished in 2008 and 2009. 2009 and 2010. 1.5 million. And they're going to conduct these, and they're going to examine to see if the complaints by these guys like Lou Brydges and all these nutcases out there that are defending these foreclosure cases and raising all these difficult questions, see if they're true. We're going to disprove them, actually, is what they hope to do. It was expected to be a whitewash. They get to hire their own independent accounting firms, the Pricewaterhouse and Deloitte Touches. These are people they pay billions of dollars to. So it's like paying somebody and hiring somebody that you pay $1 billion to and saying, hey, investigate me and tell the world what you find out I did wrong. Well, guess what? It's going to be a whitewash. And their methodology was suspect, was very poor. They didn't do it right. Nevertheless, they're cherry-picking ones. Nevertheless, after 2 years, they've completed 250,000. They didn't complete anywhere near the 1.5 million. They completed 250,000. But they were finding depending on the servicer, and there's 12 major bank servicers, between 30 and 80% of the foreclosures the particular servicer had completed in 2009 and 2010 was based on some fabricated document, forged document, robo-signed document, or another, in some other way was improper. And they went back to OCC and said, this has cost us $1 billion, $250,000, $1 billion. They spent $4,000 for each one of these audits. Our audits cost $1,000, and they're a lot more thorough and a lot more revealing of problems, because we also examine the origination of the loan, in which we find a lot of unlawful activity and fraud. So they go back to OCC and they say, look, we can't conduct any more of these audits. It's too damaging. It's too costly. And so OCC says, fine. So they come up with this deal where they're going to pay $25 billion. They're going to not have to conduct any more audits, and they're going to pay the people that they found were wrongfully foreclosed. They're going to pay them some pittance, like $1,500, $500, $2,000, which, I suppose makes the people feel, well, oh yeah, you took my house based on a fraud upon the court, and I get $2,000. Well, that makes it all right. And some people only get $500. We got about 100 clients that are in foreclosure, and they haven't been foreclosed. They're still in their house, because we fight the cases sometimes 4, 5, 6 years before we get a resolution, which is not to lose the house. And I'll go into that in the coming segments. But they send these checks out, and they don't tell anybody what was found. They just say, as a result of the independent foreclosure review, there were there were deficiencies in the foreclosure process or of your mortgage. Obviously, with all of our clients, there's the foreclosure process is still ongoing. So what would I do as an attorney? We promulgated what is called discovery, interrogatories, requests for production of documents, third-party subpoenas, looking into what exact deficiency was found in the foreclosure process, because I want to know about this, and I know the judge wants to know about what fraud was committed in his court. At least the judges outside of Cook County. Well, the judges in Cook County also, I'm sure, are going to want to know. I hope most of them would want to know, but, I've been practicing law for 33 years, doing nothing but litigation, and what happens in Cook County never surprises me. We have cases in 11 counties, and there is a variety of the way things are handled by the different judges, and they're all trying to do a very good job, and they're all very fine, and they're all, as far as I know, honest. But there is, I see things on a daily basis in Cook County that I haven't seen in 33 years in practicing law. But we nevertheless, there's only so much a judge can do. I mean, when the evidence is in front of him and he's confronted with the evidence, if he suppresses it, well, we take it up on appeal. There's going to be an appellate court, which brings up a very important point that I want to talk about. You see, the whole landscape is so changing in this field. And it's just like, it's just a 180-degree turn. The Illinois Supreme Court had promulgated three new what are called Supreme Court rules that govern how litigation is handled last month. All three rules are very much recognizing, very much of an indication that the Illinois Supreme Court recognizes that Illinois homeowners have been getting screwed in the courts wrongfully. And it's basically an announcement to all the judges handling foreclosure cases, this has got to stop, and I mean stop right now, because this is really, they got to have the note before they can file a suit to foreclose. They got to show that they're the holder of the mortgage. And they got to show that they gave the person, the homeowner, all the opportunities for modification. And so what we're having is all the circuit courts are having these mandatory mediation in which the bank has to certify that they are offering all the modification programs. You see, they've been sabotaging the modification programs because they're making more money in the foreclosures and in then selling the houses. And so the whole landscape is changing. And anything you've heard about, the foreclosure is a foregone conclusion, there's no defense, it's a note, it's a mortgage, there's nothing I can do about it, is wrong. You can defend a foreclosure case. You can fight it. You can demand for restructuring. You can demand a modification of your mortgage. You need a competent legal attorney. And that, foreclosure attorney. And that involves an attorney who is knowledgeable with the affirmative defenses that you can be raised about audits, about the investigations involving the origination of the loan and the securitization of the loan. And attorneys who aren't knowledgeable in that should be sending their cases to foreclosure defense attorneys. I love to be hired by other attorneys. Half of our cases were hired by other attorneys. And we have the other attorneys, they watch over us. And they'll report to the client about what we're doing. And I've split the fee with them, which is legal. I mean, it's a good reason for it. It's like having in medicine, when you have a general practitioner, and if you have a special, like a cancer or heart problem, you go to a specialist. But your GP watches over things and kind of explains it as sort of the liaison. That is what the general, the attorneys who are not, because foreclosure defense is a very, very intellectually demanding, complex field, and you have to concentrate in just foreclosure defense. You can't do foreclosure defense one day and DUIs the next and immigration the next. And, if you're going to do foreclosure defense, you got to do just that, because it's, first of all, we're running short of time here. So when you're looking for a foreclosure defense attorney, and, believe me, there's more than enough business for everybody. I want there to be a specialized bar of, not a specialized, a concentrated bar, attorneys that concentrate in foreclosure defense and do nothing but that and know it and know how to do it properly, because it's a broad front approach. It's not just defending the lawsuit. It's applying for the modifications. It's applying for restructuring. It's having investors who will maybe buy out the bank and then lease the property back to the owner. There is a whole smorgasbord of options and things you can do. This is the Lou Brydges Show. We're going to break again for sports and weather and come back, and we're going to talk about some specific things. Stick with us.
Facebook.com, The Lou Brydges Show. FightIllinoisForeclosures.com.
Louis Brydges of the law firm Brydges & O & Associates, one of the leading foreclosure defense firms in the Chicago area, rejoins you now on the Lou Brydges Show. Here's Lou on how you might avoid foreclosure and deal with a mortgage that's underwater.
Welcome back, the Lou Brydges Show. Again, we didn't finish the news segments. New York, a Living Lies weblog, one of the best weblogs. If you ever want to go to really follow what's going on in this field all around the country, there's like 3 websites that I know of, and I'm sure there's more. But there's the big ones, the granddaddies. The original one was really kind of stopforeclosurefraud.com. Living Lies weblog, which is Neil Garfeld. Neil Garfeld is the grandfather of foreclosure defense attorneys. He's out of Florida. He's back. He was out for a while with an illness. But Professor Adam Levitin at Georgetown University has probably emerged as one of the leading academic authorities in the foreclosure field, the foreclosure defense field. He testified before the Financial Crisis Investigation Commission 4 years ago, which was really quite I read the FCIC report, at least the 200 pages that had to do with the legal findings. And it was a very comprehensive, thorough examination. 4 years ago, he totally decimated the entire concept of MERS, which has since been decimated by the Cincinnati Law Review article and now many of the courts. MERS is no longer, the banks don't even bother using MERS anymore, but most of the mortgages were placed through this mortgage electronic registry. See, this way the banks, they not only screwed the American public, but they screwed all the recorder of deeds offices around the country of about some estimates as much as over a 10-year period, as much as $1 trillion of recording fees. Which the recorders are trying to recover now. Because you see, the thing is that the people, at least of this state and many states, we did when we have a constitution, it's called constituting a government. We constituted a government. We created a government. And one of the government entities we created was a recorder of deeds office. And that recorder of deeds office we constituted to keep track of the various ownership interests of real estate in our county. Well, the banks bypassed all that because they had their own that they owned. They set up the Mortgage Electronic Registry System, MERS, in 1996, which is owned by the 12 major banks to keep track of the various transfers of mortgages. You see, most mortgages are transferred 4, 5, 6 times in securitization. These transfers have to be done in accordance with law. They weren't, which is one of the big defenses we raise. Because in Illinois, we have something called the Conveyances Act, which is essentially a statutory enactment of the old statutory of frauds from 500 years ago in England. This is something that the Cook County judges should listen to this segment very carefully, because I think they've had difficulty grasping this, but they're starting to get it now. The statute of frauds says that conveyances of real estate must be in writing in recordable form. To be a writing in recordable form, you need 4 things: the identity of the grantor, grantee, description of the real estate, and the interest in the real estate that's being transferred. An endorsement on a note, a blank endorsement on a note, having a copy of a note, doesn't make you the holder of the mortgage. I mean, we had a case one time, the plaintiff was claiming, my client holds the mortgage. Here, I've got a copy of the note. The judge said, well, counsel, what do you have to say to that? And I said, could I see that? And he said, yeah, hand him the copy of the note. He handed me the copy of the note. And I said, Judge, well, I now have a copy of the note. I guess I'm the owner of the mortgage now, right? So that's how ridiculous that is. Some of these theories would have had the attorneys and the judges that were buying them at first, which are very few, and there's hardly many left now. They're still buying these ridiculous legal theories. They'd have their law school professors tearing their hair out. New York is considering criminalizing every person who participates in fraudulent foreclosures. I had a couple of attorneys at a foreclosure mill law firm. I just turned white as ghosts. I had one emotion, and I wasn't being arrogant. I tried to get along with these people and everything, and I had one emotion. The judge is allowing me to conduct discovery into the independent foreclosure review. And, the judge was saying, I would think, he said to the plaintiff's attorney, he said, I would think that you would want to know. If your client is engaged in some kind of fraud, wouldn't you want to know? Don't you have a duty to investigate and find out? And the attorney's kind of hemmed and hawed and said, well, Judge, there's no evidence of that. I said, well, you haven't looked. You need to look. There's a Supreme Court rule that says you need to, question your client, and you can't perpetrate a fraud upon the court. So as we're leaving court, I said to one of the attorneys, I said, you don't want to be the one holding the notary seal when the FBI burst in the door. And I was just kind of said it as a joke, and they turned white as ghosts. The banks are hedging their bets. Here's a news report. The banks hedging their bets on wrongful foreclosures. You see, the banks know. I mean, they aren't dumb. They have real attorneys, not just the foreclosure mill attorneys. They have some real attorneys. The foreclosure mill attorneys are real attorneys, but they do just one thing: foreclosure. They've got some attorneys that are a little more, experienced, let's say, and they're telling them that you're going to be hit with a lot of wrongful foreclosures. That's one of our strategies, is we file counterclaims against the banks. If you've been given the runaround on a mortgage modification, and you were sandbagged and dual-tracked, or there was fraud in the origination of the mortgage, there are things called the Consumer Fraud Act, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, the Fair Debt Credit Reporting Act. We file these counterclaims, and we're going to do this more and more and more, because these counterclaims are, the bank is responsible. If you're the holder of the mortgage, for whom the bank is servicing the mortgage, they can be held liable for fraud in the origination of the mortgage, because it wasn't by a lender; it was by a broker. And when the broker commits a fraud, then the contract they produce, you can be defended on the basis of that fraud, and a counterclaim can be filed. We've gone through our entire segment here. They seem to be getting shorter and shorter. I'm Lou Brydges. This is a Lou Brydges Show. We go through a lot of this at our website and our these other websites I've talked about. Mike, when do you give them the Facebook?
The Facebook page is facebook.com/TheLouBrydges Show. That's Bridges with a Y. As well, our website is FightIllinoisForeclosures.com. Feel free, call in, get a free
We, the
consultation.
people, need to start to put a stop to this. And you can be part of something very good.
We now return to the Lou Brydges Show, telling the truth about the foreclosure crisis and the greatest financial crime in history. Here's Lou Brydges, an attorney on the front lines of the ongoing battle for our land.
Somebody's got to tell my announcer, this is the greatest financial crime spree in history, and it's continuing to this day. We have a common question that we get from a lot of people. Mike's going to read you the question, kind of paraphrase. A lot of people have been writing in this question and sending in this question. And by the way, if you have questions, please send them in. We'll try to get to them, and we'll try to combine 2 or 3 questions into one question. Or go ahead.
Okay, so I'm current on my mortgage, although I'm underwater. I've tried applying for modification, and I've really gotten nowhere in the process. Is there something that I can do?
Yes, there is. And there's several things you can do. The main thing is what's called a strategic default. A strategic default is you're going to, we call it actually a suspension of payment, is that we first what we like to do is get an audit, some kind of showing that we've got, that there was some sort of fraud or wrongful conduct or unlawful activity in the origination of the mortgage. And then we write the bank a letter and we say, look, we have been engaged by the homeowner to represent them for the purpose of negotiating a restructuring of the mortgage. That is, a reduction of principal balance to reflect the true fair market value of the property. The current fair market value, the mortgage is currently far greater than the fair market value. Therefore, it would be financially imprudent at best. Some would say stupid. We don't put that in the letter. financially imprudent for the homeowner to continue to pay the mortgage. Please have someone from your bank with authority to negotiate a restructuring contact us so we can begin the process. In the interim, our client will suspend temporarily payment of the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance associated with this property. We then go on to stress, we wish to stress the client does not wish to default or to have the property go into foreclosure. We want to negotiate a restructuring that is fair. This would be the better interest of the owner of the mortgage. You're just the servicer. And you have a duty to advise the true owner of the mortgage that we wanted to negotiate a restructuring. There was wrongful conduct, unlawful conduct, a fraudful appraisal, and a lot of other whole plethora of violations of specific federal regulations that we set forth and itemized based on the audit. And that's what induced my client to enter into the negotiate, to sign the note of mortgage. So my client was unlawfully induced. So, you're going to clear up those problems. We're going to clear up the underwater problems. You're going to have a performing note of mortgage, and that's in the interests of the true owner of the mortgage. And if it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, we're going to start doing a lot of those. And the private securitized mortgages, they're going to force the servicers also to do these because the problem is most of these private securitized mortgage-backed securities, securitized trusts, the trustee is also the servicer. So the trustees, I know this gets very complicated. My producer's rolling her eyes here saying nobody's going to, this is a 2-hour lecture you need to talk about. But the thing is, a strategic default is an option. At the same time, we're trying to negotiate this. If they want to foreclose, fine. We're going to fight the case for 2, 3, 4 years, and you're going to pay nothing on the mortgage. You're going to pay just our monthly fee, which we try to make about a quarter of what the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance is going to be. So you're going to save up a lot of, as opposed to overpaying by $1,000 a month, you're going to be saving about $1,000 or $1,500 a month if you have a $300,000 mortgage on a $200,000 house, and less if the numbers are less, and more if the numbers are more. You're going to save that money for 2 or 3 years. We're going to fight the foreclosure. We may even file a counterclaim against if the evidence warrants. And we're going to hold on to the property. You're going to get the use and value of the property while we fight the foreclosure. And we're going to fight it every step of the way. We're going to engage in discovery. We're going to file counterclaims. We're going to force them to produce every little shred of evidence necessary. We're going to have an audit that gives us evidence. We're going to make them answer that evidence and counterclaims. And, we're having great success doing this. And necessary, if we have a judge that doesn't get it, which there are a few out there still, that have trouble, accepting our because we don't just delay. We are not in the delay game. And any attorney who's in the delay game is giving our whole foreclosure defense field a bad name, and I don't like that. That's wrong. We have legitimate evidence for every case that we defend, and we will find, some with yours. If not, well, then maybe we negotiate a better deal. But we're always getting better deals for these, almost always getting better deals for our clients. We got $100,000 principal. We've gotten about 20 principal reductions so far this year. I mean, up to $100,000, $90,000, $20,000, $60,000. And it's a new note, a new mortgage. It's better for the homeowner, better for the lender, the bank or whoever actually owns the mortgage, because, again, the bank doesn't own the mortgage. They're the servicer. They make more money servicing a loan in foreclosure. For 5 years, they've been sabotaging my efforts. I was one of the leading proponents from the very beginning. The only solution to this is to restructure the mortgages to reduce the principal balance to reflect the true fair market value of the property. And we've been fighting this for 5 years. The problem is that the servicers I'm dealing with don't want to do it because they're not going to get as much money. But now they're starting to be called out on this. And so things are changing. The bottom line is Lisa Madigan said in an interview last week with Mr. Theus, I can't remember his first name. I remember the president of the Illinois State Bar Association. You need to have competent legal counsel. Now, these HUD counselors are not knowledgeable in the defenses. They can help you with the modification, but I want to make this very clear. If you're underwater, a modification is not a good deal. In fact, it's a bad deal. You need a modification with restructuring, a reduction of principal balance. Do not just accept a modification that reduces the monthly payments if you're underwater, because you're just renting the property and you're still paying the taxes. And that ain't right if you're going to rent the property, because you don't own it. Let the owner pay the taxes. But, the thing is, you want to stay in the property. So many people want to stay in the property, and then they have a right to. This is over the land. You have to fight for your rights and your right liberties, and this is very important that you do this. Some would say the future of Western civilization relies on this, because if our country fails, that's going to be it. So it's always been about the land. It always will be about the land. It's the Battle of Evermore. Never give up the land. Fight for truth and justice. I'll be there with you. I'll be honored to be there with you. Well, I'll be, Mike and my whole crew will be there with you. And give us a call and talk to one of our paralegals and set up a free consultation. One of our attorneys, myself or Scotto, will give you a free consultation.
Welcome back to the Lou Brydges Show with Louis Brydges, one of Chicago's leading foreclosure defense attorneys. Here's Lou to tell you what to look for when hiring a foreclosure defense attorney and how to avoid being conned on AM 560. The Answer.
Welcome back, listeners. You know, if you're underwater, you really have nothing to lose by a strategic default because you don't own the property anyway. Well, you say, well, my credit's going to take a hit. Well, let me tell you something. If you're $100,000 underwater, you may have a good credit score, but if you ever go apply for like a major loan or something, you get a car loan or something, but a major loan, you look at your financial statement and you compute in that you're $100,000 underwater, well, guess what? Your financial worth may be negative. So that doesn't make and what are you paying for that credit score? If you're $100,000 underwater and you're overpaying by, almost $1,000 a month, $12,000 a year, is a good credit score with $12,000 a year cash to you, year in and year out? The strategic default, we object to the validity of the debt because if there's some evidence to show that the debt was unlawfully procured by the originator, either based on a phony appraisal, and believe me, these audits that we get, they examine everything associated with the solicitation, the application, the processing of the application, the closing, and the servicing of the loan. They always reveal some violation of federal regulations, and most of the time, like 30 or 40 federal regulations that were violated. Countrywide's out of business. Washington Mutual is out of business. Taylor Bean Financial, the owner's in jail. Because these originators were perpetrating frauds. I mean, so many of them, not the legitimate ones, but I mean, there were so many. And if you're that much underwater, well, then the appraisal probably wasn't conducted in accordance with federal regulations. Because, this was an artificial balloon that was created. So worrying about the credit score is like the least of your worries. We object to the validity of the debt, and we have credit restoration. So we have paralegals. See, what we've done, I've set up this firm, doing this for 4.5 years now. I've gone to 5 years. Well, I've set up this firm where I got paralegals that are helping with the modification applications. We got paralegals that are objecting to the credit. We got paralegals that are dealing with the short sale. We got attorneys that are overseeing everything and attorneys going to court that are knowledgeable and do nothing but foreclosure defense. And so we're defending the case in court, and at the same time, we have this broad front approach. We're doing everything possible. We have investors that will actually buy out the bank and then lease the property to you for 2 years and then sell it back to you in 2 years for something fair market value. Anything to get that if you're and so many of our clients are underwater by up to $100,000, $200,000. If your mortgage is worth more than about 10% more than the true fair market value of the property, you should see an attorney and consider a strategic default. And get an audit because, if there was unlawful activity that was for the purpose of inducing you to sign that note of mortgage, then, that's a factor that needs to be brought into play in a renegotiation. You're in a situation where you got to fight to hold on to the land and you got to hold on to it, so fight to have a fair mortgage. That's all we're asking for. And we're not asking for anybody to get their home free and clear of a mortgage, a fair mortgage and own the land. Jonathan Locke said the land, he's a philosopher, our country was founded on said the land and liberty are inextricably bound. Never give up the land. Never give up your liberty. Fight for truth and justice. And we'll be there with you. I'm Lou Brydges, Mike Main, Debbie Schreiber. Thank you for joining us.
Listening to the weekly radio broadcast of the Lou Brydges Show with attorney Louis Brydges, telling the truth about foreclosure. Have you received threats of foreclosure? Are you in a foreclosure right now, seeking a loan modification, considering strategic default, or any other legal action? Know and protect your rights, and do not give up the land. Lou Brydges' passion is to help you keep your home and achieve your legal goals. To receive a free consultation, which may help you decide how to defend against foreclosure, understand your options, and learn what to look for in choosing a foreclosure defense attorney, call 224-513-1231. That's 224-513-1231. or visit FightIllinoisForeclosures.com. That's FightIllinoisForeclosures.com. Get real answers from a real foreclosure defense firm and discover the legal tools at your disposal. Tune into AM 560 The Answer next Saturday morning at 8 for The Lou Brydges Show, telling the truth about foreclosure.